New reporting this afternoon from the Washington Post saying the U.S. intercepted conversations between senior Iranian officials, saying the recent strikes on their nuclear facilities were less devastating than they expected. It comes as the head of the UN nuclear watchdog said while the strikes had caused some damage, Iran could produce enriched uranium in a matter of months. Joining me now is Jonathan Panikov, former Deputy National Intelligence Officer, and Ray Takei, former Senior Advisor on Iran for the State Department, now a Senior Fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations. Gentlemen, thanks for being here. Jonathan, how much is possible to know at this point about the actual state of Iran's nuclear program?
For having me. Look, we're slowly getting there, but it's going to take a number of more weeks, if not months, to actually be sure. SIGINT, like we saw, the Signals Intelligence, the Washington Post is reporting, will start to come in. But until you get IAEA inspectors on the ground or others, getting a definitive view of exactly how damaging those blasts were is just not going to be fully possible. It's going to be best estimates, and that can be meaningful, but it's not going to give a conclusive picture. So we still have a little time to go yet.
Which means it's fair to say that the president's assessment of everything being obliterated is very much premature, and there's no way to confirm that. It's an opinion rather than a fact. That said, Ray, Iran's leader Ayatollah Khamenei broke his silence this week, claiming the Americans failed to achieve anything significant in the strikes. What did you make of what he said, and how concerned do we need to be about, say, retaliation?
Well, I think that claim was also exaggerated. There obviously been damage to the Iranian nuclear program, and as was mentioned, we won't know the full scale of it until and unless IAEA goes in there and reestablishes the baseline of Iran's nuclear apparatus. That may not happen. There's an Iranian parliamentary measure that essentially called for suspension of relationship with the IAEA. In terms of the Iranian retaliation, I'm not quite sure at this point they're capable of retaliating in a significant way. But down the road, I think they once more will target American and allied installations that are vulnerable, whether they're tourists, embassies, and military installations through proxies and otherwise. So this story is just unfolding in terms of its full scope and months and years to come.
And indeed, they took that action immediately in the aftermath, but fortunately not much damage and certainly no injuries to American servicemen and women. So, Jonathan, you wrote that there's, quote, a narrow path to diplomacy, saying Iran is vulnerable and the U.S. can use the threat of additional strikes as leverage. Do you really think that Iran will come to the table?
I think that they may end up having no choice. The problem is that Iran is between a rock and a hard place. If it doesn't come to the table for diplomacy, and it turns out that in reality they were able to move either highly enriched uranium to secret sites that they've had, or that their nuclear program wasn't as damaged. We just saw today the president say, yes, he'd be willing to do more strikes. That puts Iran in a very difficult position. The flip side is Iran has always held out that they have a right to enrich uranium. That obviously is a no-go for the U.S. It's the red line. So I think there is a narrow path for the U.S. and Iran to get on the same page, at least to some sort of framework agreement. But it's going to have to be quiet and private behind the scenes. Obviously, the public statements from both the president and Ayatollah Khamenei don't give significant inspiration. And so that's why it's going to have to be a bit more private, not public.
Ray, to the point that you made about the Iranian parliament voting to suspend cooperation with the IAEA, so that means we're going to know even less about Iran's nuclear program going forward. How worrisome is that? This is the kind of thing you need to have accuracy and intelligence on to keep everybody safe.
There is a lot of criticism of the IAEA in Iran that it essentially provided the blueprint for the Israeli and American strike. I think that's unfair, but it is not something that's being said. And it has to be noted that every installation and facility that was attacked by the United States and Israel in the past 12 days was known to the IAEA. So if there is a clandestine program that the IAEA is not aware of, then the Americans and Israelis are also not aware of. I think it'd be very difficult for IAEA to resume the kind of intrusive inspections that it had before, simply because the Islamic Republic officials view it as an instrument of Western espionage.
Last word to you on that, Jonathan.
Look, it's worth remembering that, frankly, almost every Iranian nuclear site that began as a clandestine site and then was discovered and then declared through to the IAEA. I think Ray's right. It's important to have the inspectors on the ground, but at the end of the day, if the Iranians decide they're going to pull out of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, or if the Iranians decide that the IAEA has made it more difficult, then there's a greater chance that we're going to have increased hostilities in Iran in the coming months and years, not lower and decreased ones.